Hey guys, I'm the 50s Kid. Welcome back to the M62TU rebuild project. In the last video, we installed the new timing components and retimed the engine, and a couple people commented on that video, hey, what happened to the Vanos rebuild? Did you skip it or did I miss something? Honestly, to that point, I wasn't even thinking about rebuilding the Vanos because I had remembered reading that the Vanos wasn't a thing on this engine. It wasn't a common problem that people normally, needed to rebuild it. So I just wasn't thinking about it. And when some people commented, I just kind of started to think about it at that point, and I started to look into it, and I realized, yes, there is a rebuild kit from B-Sans Systems. And yes, you should probably rebuild it. And here's the list of symptoms. And one of those symptoms was obviously the rattling that you heard at the beginning clip at the very beginning of this rebuild series, which I had attributed to the engine guides maybe being a little bit broken. We now know that the engine guides weren't really that broken. There was just a little bit of, the little clips on the plastic had broken at the top, and maybe it was kind of flapping a little bit, but that might not have been it. But when you think about the Vanos and that little rattling in that clip, and you see the next symptom, which is you might be low on power. At that point, I remembered when I took this thing for a test drive, it felt like it was a little bit low on power. I kind of filed it away in my mental Rolodex at the time, thinking I'll recheck that after the whole rebuild is done. But now that I've seen that list of symptoms, I'm thinking, oh, could be the Vanos, like these guys were saying. So I bought the rebuild kit. Finally, it's here. So we're just going to rebuild the Vanos in this video. So let's get started. So thank you to those viewers who pointed this out. This is definitely something that should be a part of the timing chain guide removal and replacement job. So this is basically everything you're going to need in order to do the job. You need a set of picks. You need these two picks, the little 45-degree and the 90-degree one. This is an Aries set off Amazon. Harbor Freight now makes an Icon set that looks pretty good. Their other two cheapy sets are too cheap, and especially the orange one, what happens is the shaft starts spinning in the handle, so don't buy that one. There's a black one with a black handle that I was using for quite a while. That one was a little bit better, but I recommend the Aries one. Some markers, some Sharpies to mark some alignment marks, flathead screwdriver, this little tool which turns the Vanos, whichever one you have, which turns the little shaft like that, is helpful. Comes with your timing rebuild kit. You're going to need a torque wrench that can torque something to 100 foot-pounds. You'll need some kind of grease, a little bit of oil. This is the press tool from B-Sans Systems. This part right here fits in the jaws of a vise. So you're going to need a vise of some kind in order to hold this thing while you torque it. You're going to need a torque wrench that you can slip a cheater pipe on, like the same one that you use to loosen the crank bolts, if you did it that way. And your vise needs to be on a strong, heavy bench. This is kind of a prerequisite because you're torquing this thing to ridiculous figures. And I just got to tell you that my bench is not strong enough, nor was my vise. And I ended up not torquing this thing manually, because what you have to do is you have to torque this thing with the Vanos unit in here. You have to torque it to 100 foot-pounds and then turn it around another full turn. And that is a lot, let me tell you. So I ended up using my high impact torque gun with 27mm socket. So that I ended up doing and using, and I still needed the vise to hold the thing in place, and it was still kind of slipping out of the vise even at that point. So just to let you know, that's required for this job. Also, a little bit of brake clean and some oil for lubrication to lubricate the seals. Now, this is the kit from B-Sans Systems. I've obviously done this once before. These are the seals from the other Vanos on the other side, and this is what the seal looks like. And the seal is sitting in here. This inner part right here comes out, and the seal is sitting in here sort of like this underneath this black plastic down here. So what you have to do is you have to get this green seal out first, pretty easy, and then this rubber O-ring is behind it, and we'll just kind of pull both of these out there. We'll put new ones in. And it's a little difficult, but I now know I know the difficulties now, and I can kind of guide you through it as I'm doing it. And then what we need to do, and the reason we're pressing it is because once we put the new seals in and you have this ring out, when you press down on this piece of black plastic, it separates from this metal lip that you see right here, and there's about a millimeter of separation. So the press tool will press this thing down a little bit more so that that space is gone, and it takes quite a bit of effort, but it does work. It worked out just fine. Everything went according to the instructions, so it's a good kit. So here's how it goes. First, I'm going to clean off all the varnish here with some brake clean. We want to make a mark on this thing. So the instructions suggest, you know, doing it at one of these little indentations. So I'll just do that. So basically make a mark right there and then make a mark on here like this. Doesn't have to be perfect, just general reference lines. So you know where it went on. So now we're gonna pull this up and it kind of twists to the side. You see how that happened? Twists to the side and then we'll pull it up and out. So now what happened here is that this little washer right here normally gets stuck in this portion here, but it looks like it didn't in this case. So we want to pull it down. When I did this on the other one, it did get stuck in there. So let's get this washer down. Aha. And you want to put this washer back in here. Now what happened was, you see how that piston was up and I just pushed it down? Don't worry, we'll pull it back up again. We needed it to be up. And this ring fits in here so tightly that, I mean, A, you have to get it in correctly. And B, once it's in there, you can actually use that ring. We're gonna slam this down just a little bit in order to get that piston up. So see what happened? This goes down and up. So you can use the lip of that ring to sort of pull this up and hold it up. That's why you put it back in there. And now what we've done is, you see how it's got these teeth right here, but underneath that is a flat surface, and it's the diameter is less than the teeth. So by pulling up, we've opened up the cavity down inside right there, and we need that open cavity in order to get the seal out. The seal is sitting right here, right here. See how my pick is pointing inward towards here? So that's where the seal is. The Teflon seal, and then behind that is the O-ring. So we have to kind of pull both of those out of there and put the two new ones in. Kind of interesting. All right, I've kind of bumped up my light. I hope it's not casting too much of a shadow, but what we do is we take the pick and we just insert it down in here. I'll try to hold it up from the inside like this so you guys aren't blocked. So you just slip the pick down in here and you get the Teflon seal up. You see how I have that? It's kind of up like that. Slip the pick in here and you just kind of pull it out like that. Pretty simple and easy. Now, this seal is, especially the new one, like it's gonna deform real easily. Like you see how it's kind of deformed a little bit right here, and then the edges sort of are no longer perfect. You know, you can squeeze it like this and it kind of gets a little weirdly deformed and stuff. It'll get creases and stuff. Don't worry about that. That's, you know, when you first start doing this and you insert it in, you're gonna feel like, oh man, I screwed it up and now I need another one. But it doesn't matter. The edges right here have like nothing to do with the function of this O-ring. Really, all it is the purpose of it is to seal against the surface of this right here. So it's just the inner part that's sealing, and these conformed edges, really, they're not sealing the inner chamber where the O-ring goes. It's all about just sealing against here and here to keep oil from moving past this, the under part of this to the top part. That's all it's really doing, and it's working in conjunction with that O-ring on the inside to kind of do that. So that's all it is. The most difficult part is the Teflon seal, because you know, you're gonna feel like you screwed it up. The O-ring is actually pretty easy. Well, it's more difficult to get out, but easy to get back in for some strange reason. So for this one, you just kind of gotta dig around, get the O-ring out, lose it a couple of times. You kind of gotta dig your pick under it. Oh, I lost it again. Okay, so now I've hooked under the O-ring. I'm gonna try to pull it up. There, finally got it. And now you just pull that sucker out. So this one I got out in one piece. The other one I I chose to break it in half because it was a little, just worked out easier. But that's how it goes in there. So all that really matters is the inner surface, and this O-ring kind of helps to pull that inner surface against the piston. Cool. So let's kind of clean this off a little bit. Now let's get our new stuff. They give you some extra O-rings here. It's for another part. I'll show you what part it's for afterwards. It's kind of a value add that they give you to the kit, but these are the only parts that really matter for rebuilding the Vanos. So we have our O-ring. For the O-ring, what we're gonna do is just start stuffing it in there. And this 90-degree pick kind of works a little better because the pick itself is further away and you won't damage the O-ring as much. So you just kind of start shoving it in there. And the trick with these is once you get a little of it in there, you want to start pushing it back into the groove so that it sort of has somewhere to go and get out of the way. If you just push it in and don't push it into the groove, you're going to wind up with the end sticking out quite a bit, like as you see right here. So it kind of helps to start pulling it in to the groove without messing it up. See, and you sort of want to pull it up. We might need a little more in there first. Okay, I got a little bit of it into the groove, and you need to start pushing a little more down in there. So that starts going into the groove. Sorry, I'm trying not to block you guys as much as possible, but at a certain point you just gotta. So what happens is the O-ring falls down deeper than the groove, so you sort of have to pick it up a little bit in order to get it in there. Now, what's happening is just the edges here are pinched, and what I need is for more of the O-ring to go in to like either end so that I can get this hump out, but it's sort of a little difficult. So I think what I might do is just push the whole O-ring down in as best I can and get it down in there. And once I have it in there, I can move it around. Let's see if I can do that. Yeah. Got it mostly pushed down. This one is super Brazilian, you know, it's an O-ring, so you can push it quite a bit. So there we go. We got it in there. Now we're just running the pick around. And I find the straight-sided pick is best for this because I can just kind of put it in there and it's super flat against the area where it's supposed to go, and you just run it around. And that positions it and seats it into the channel. So now that O-ring is inside this little groove right here. We can see that correctly. The screen on my camera really isn't showing me much here, so but that's what you do. Now, this guy is the fun part. If you're in, if your workshop is really cold, I guess less than 70 degrees, I guess this thing shrinks and it kind of, I mean, I guess it's more difficult to work with, but I'm 70 degrees here today, so it's just fine. If it is cold, you can soak this thing in some warm water to kind of warm it up and shrink it a little. Now, trick with this one is, like I was saying before, as you get it in there, you see, I don't know if we can really see this, so I can get an angle of this. Again, I can't see enough definition on my camera here, but the O-ring at this point has fallen down below the groove, or the Teflon seal is what we call this. It's fallen down below the groove. We want to lift it up a little bit and put it into that groove again so that it has somewhere to go. Because if you don't put it into that groove, so that it moves backwards and moves out like this. What's going to happen is once you get the whole thing in there, it's going to bunch up and crunch up and curl and stuff, and it's going to fold into ribbons like this, and it's going to look really weird, and it's going to be hard to get it straightened out again. So as much as you can, you need to just guide it into the groove while you're putting it in. And that's the real key. That's the trick to this whole job. Remember to keep this piston up like this. And we just start feeding it into the groove. Because that's the best way that I found to do this. The guys' instructions from B-Sand Systems, they're a little bit extra. There's almost too much information, and it seems a little confusing, it seems a little daunting, but again, once you do the first side, then you understand. And the guy does sell an extra Teflon seal. I guess a lot of people were screwing up the first one. So if you want to buy that, that's fine, and he'll take it back if you don't use it. It's an extra 20 bucks or something. But I felt I did not need it. So right at the end here, we have no choice. We will need to get a little bit of a fold. Hopefully we can see what's going on here. We're gonna have to have this little bit of a fold because there's no other choice. We've put it into the groove as much as possible. We're minimizing this fold as much as possible, but you are gonna need one fold. So I'm gonna keep on pushing this in here, and I might have to block you guys a little bit as I do this because we have no choice. So you just don't want to poke the seal with the tip of your pick and cut it. That's what you don't want to do. So you've gotten it in there. See how I've gotten it in there like that? It just needs to be pushed down a little bit more. Right here. There. Now it's in there. Now I just got a little hump. Just a little tiny hump right in there. Hope we can see that. Yeah, a little tiny hump. So now all I do is I run my pick around and I make sure that the seal is sat into the groove. And I just start working it and massaging it and just pushing that down and in like that. So I pushed it down and in, and I run my pick around. Again, the flat pick, you run it around and you just make sure it's completely seated in the groove as much as possible, because the thing needs to be totally seated in the groove in order to get the piston back in. So I can still see the hump where it was, and I'll spend some time sort of running over it, rolling over it with my pick, sort of pushing it in. Again, the tip of the pick is down against the bottom so that I don't poke anything. You know, it's metal on the bottom. So I'm just using the side of the pick to sort of massage the seal and stuff. And just doing that. And now I believe I'm pretty good. I can see, I don't know if I can get the camera angle right, but I can see a little bit of the waviness right on the edge. But what'll happen is the piston will slip down past that and kind of get that all worked out, and it's not going to be a problem. So I believe we're good now. So hopefully we did not rub our mark off too much. I think I did. It's right there. Let me add that mark back. This is why it's important for the oil to be gone, which it's kind of got a little oily here. So you might want to wipe it off extra good and wipe off the oil from your hands. That's important, because I almost wiped this whole mark off. And the thing about this is, I guess they're balanced. I don't exactly know how they're balanced or how they accomplish that balance, because I don't see any balance grooves. Typically when they machine something and they, in order to balance it together, they take a little bite of metal out somewhere in order to get the balance perfect. So I don't see where they've done that, but that's what the B-Sand System guy says, so we're gonna go with it. So we're going to put it back in. Remember how it tilted to this side? So we need to offset it, and then it'll tilt back into place. So we'll go here, and we'll start pushing down on this a little bit. Actually, here's what I'm forgetting is a little bit of oil to lubricate this O-ring. So we want to put some in here, or assembly lube. I don't have assembly lube. I believe that's what he suggested. This is a little stickier, but oil works just fine. So we'll kind of do that. Okay, we'll try to push down. So it doesn't want to go yet, which means we need to massage our seal a little bit more into its groove. I think I need a little spot of oil here. Okay. We're going to do this again. There. So now we're in, and we'll pop out again. Okay. And just inspect your seal, make sure it didn't pop out and get folded over, which it didn't. It's fine. So now we'll do it like maybe one more time. Make sure this can go in. Yeah. Now make sure that this turns correctly. Yeah. So it should be just like slightly harder to turn it this time because the seal's new. It'll get worked in once the engine comes up to temp and all that stuff. So we are now good. Very nice. Now we will take the piston out again. We still need our alignment marks, so we're keeping those. We're going to put that over here. Now, if you take a screwdriver and you push down on this piece of black plastic, you'll see it moves down. And now there is a little bit of a lip right here, about a millimeter space, or even more possibly, where you can fit your pick in, right? You can fit a feeler gauge in, and that's the problem. So that's where this press kit comes in. We're going to squeeze this down, and this little metal lip is going to fold over and take up all that space. That's the fun part. So what we're gonna do here is, you see these little pins? They're gonna line up with these little holes. It's okay if you might have to bend them just a little bit. I found that I didn't have to bend them on the first one that I did. So it was just fine. But if you have to bend them, it's fine, because you know, all you need to do is just hook a multimeter to them when you're retiming the engine, so it's really not a big deal. So you do that, and then this end fits down over there, and the thing screws in, and you need to use a little bit of, he said graphite lube, which I don't have graphite lube, but I have copper grease, and it seemed to work just fine. Some kind of grease, you know? Prolong the life of your press, make it easier to turn. You definitely need something. So here on the top of this right here, also some grease. These are the friction surfaces that are going to be turning against one another. It might be a little difficult to start this at first because this might not be perfectly, you know, the Vanos and the tool might not be perfectly aligned to one another. So you might, actually this is, I think, okay. Yeah, I think it is actually turning. Yeah, that's good. There we go. All right, welcome to the vise. We need to tighten this thing to 100 foot-pounds, which is 136 Newton meters, which is quite a bit. It's gonna bend my table a little bit. All right, there we go. Now, I've got some old registration marks on here. I have them here, and then up here we got a Wipe those off for the second time. We'll wipe off any copper grease we can, which is going to be difficult. It will be on my clothes later. It will be everywhere. So even down here, I had made a registration mark, and they recommend that so that you can sort of see where you're at while you're doing this. So making a mark there and there and there, and even on top of the bolt a little bit, just so you can see it. Super important. I think the most important part is along the edge right here. That's what I'm going to be looking at. So that's super important. And he also recommends marking the where the actual Vanos is, right here, in relation to the top plate, and the same thing for down below. You want to see how much it moves or something like that. It kind of didn't matter for me because I found that I only needed one full turnaround, but I guess some people might need more than that, so you want to reposition the thing where it was before and all that stuff. So yeah, I found that doing this with a 24-inch breaker bar was just not enough. The whole table was coming up because it's just not heavy enough. So I just switched to the impact and let her rip, and that worked out. And I was looking at that bottom thing right there and in relation to the top thing, and I just went around once. Now that is not tight enough at all. And I did tighten that thing down, by the way. I might need to get a little cheater pipe for this because it is just, it's a little clapped out. I need something. I can see it's tilting up a little bit. Yeah, best I can do is my jack handle. Gotta get some more cheater pipes, man. Okay. Hopefully that's good. We are halfway around. The mark is back here. Just gonna keep going around. Where are we? We are right there. We're almost there. It doesn't have to be exact. It can be just right around the area. Perfect. We are done. You're going to need to put this back in like this. And we need our jack handle again. Get this thing loosened. Now you use the anvil. Hold here on the gear. Like that to get it off. And now we have our lip pressed down on, and it looks like this little washer came out. We'll reposition it in, not a big deal. But what you want to check is to make sure that you can't slip a feeler gauge in there. Let's go check at the bench. Sit our washer back down there. So let's get a feeler gauge. Have my millimeter feeler gauges. That's just what was handy last time. I had a 0.02 millimeter, which is like aluminum foil basically. And I was trying to slip that in there. And like this one, I found that I could not slip it in. Which means that that thing is pressed down tight, man. She's tight. Okay, we're done. That's it. Pretty easy, right? Cool, we still have our mark. Let's slip this guy back in. We might need a little bit of oil here. I remember that after I did this, it was a little more difficult to slip this in on the first one. It was a little challenging. So, let's see how this goes. Yeah, it was a little bit. This one's a little easier actually than I found the last one to be. Very nice. Let's test how that moves. Moves pretty well. Job well done. According to BSAN Systems, there are 2 O-rings for the secondary air pipe. That's that crossover pipe in front of the water pump. There's 2 O-rings for the 2 camshaft chain tensioners and 4 O-rings for the 2 engine covers, 2 mounting bolt shafts. Now, these have to be for the crossover pipe. Let me show you that. These definitely have to be these inner O-rings right here, because that's about the size of them. Okay. And then the other 2 were for the secondary chain tensioners. I guess if you remove those, you can rebuild those and change out that O-ring, which I will do. And these other 4 are for the engine cover mounting bolt shaft. I don't know what that means, to be honest with you, and I think I need to dig around and figure out what that means. So guys, about these gaskets, the 4 gaskets, the only thing I can figure is that it's these gaskets right in here, these O-rings, because that's the only thing that's in the engine cover. See if that is the same exact thing. I'm honestly, if this is what it is, I'm honestly confused as to why that even matters. I mean, it's really not that big a deal. Are these really deteriorated on a lot of these? I don't know, but I guess that's the gasket, so, or the O-ring. So I'll put them there. So this is the chain tensioner on the left side of the engine, left when you're looking from the driver's seat, from when you're sitting in the driver's seat, so the driver's side. I found it really difficult to pop up out of there. I had to use this little trim tool, metal trim tool, slip it under here and pop it up like that. You can use anything, any kind of a putty knife or whatever you have. But this O-ring was holding on, which kind of tells me that this does not need to be changed or didn't need to be pulled out at all. I don't think that it was an issue. But we have the O-rings, we're going to change them. Simple enough. Put a little oil on that, pop it back in. But yeah, I really don't think this needed to be changed. Incidentally, I found these pins from the German Auto Solutions kit for the chain tensioners to be more difficult to use than the ones from the China kit. Way more difficult. I had to actually compress this down with a clamp to get this down the final way. It probably isn't even down far enough in order to get this in. You see how the pin wants you to be, the pin's getting pulled up quite a bit. So I think in order to actually get that pin through the other slot, you see how it's through that one but not that one, I would have to compress this down all the way. So just something to note, kind of interesting. We are looking at where the Vanos actually mounts on. Now this piece right here is removable. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 bolts holding it on to the cylinder head. And there is a metal gasket right back here. And there are 3 square cut O-rings within here. This is where the Vanos solenoid goes. And those are like, that controls the different oil channels. Now apparently on the pre-99 models, this part would wear out where those square cut O-rings are, and there would be 3 channels worn into the part. So they later replaced it with a Teflon coated part, which I guess supposedly fixed the problem. At least I'm assuming it did, because that's why they replaced it. I guess BSAN Systems is recommending to remove it and replace the O-rings and replace the part with the Teflon coated part if yours is a pre-99. So given the fact that they upgraded the part, BMW upgraded the part, I was figuring that that's solved the problem and I wasn't going to need to do that. And all I was intending to do was to remove this and inspect, and if there's no wear in that channel in there, I'm not going to do anything. And I thought that I had bought a new gasket for these because I was going to take it off, inspect, and put it back on. And apparently I did not buy that gasket, which I'm kind of upset about. So if I do this right now, we're just going to have to wait a little bit longer to put the whole thing back together because I got to get those parts in. So yeah, I guess I'm going to do that because we should inspect it at the very least. It's a long one. And the other ones are short. Okay, comes off fairly easy. I'm sorry guys. This is obviously the Teflon coated part up here, so this is what experiences the scoring and whatnot. And I mean, all I see is a very light, polishing in here, but no scoring. I can see where these O-rings are. See, it's right here, 1 and 2. So that's what they're talking about, sort of, you know, at least needing to replace. But I see absolutely no scoring. The Teflon is doing its job. The new part's doing its job. So I think it's just fine. So I'm just going to put this back on. And I'm not even going to change this gasket because it looks perfectly fine. This is compressible steel. So I judge that to be fine. There we go. So, okay, I'm happy to have inspected that, but yeah, I'm going to say that unless you have the 2000 model year or above, you're not going to need to do that. And the torque on these for the chain tensioner is 15 Newton meters. Because it's a M7 bolt. So I'm going to proceed to just put everything back together and retime the engine like we saw in the previous video. Not going to record any of that. I just wanted to mention as a note, I've had these long Pittsburgh wrenches for the longest time. They're okay, right? You know, this is a 26 millimeter. Now you're never going to need a 26 millimeter for anything. So I just took this and ground off the inner edges on the bench grinder. And now it's a perfect 27 millimeter wrench. And now I actually have enough length to counter hold the camshafts. Isn't that funny? Just a note for you, if you happen to grab this set from Harbor Freight in the past and you have this, it's a good thing to modify because you're never going to need a 26 for anything. By the way, guys, I noticed when I took off this part that the original O-ring that was right here, I kind of damaged it a little bit. There's kind of a little chunk that I took out of it. And I found the correct O-ring in this set of the green O-rings from Harbor Freight. So I managed to find that inside of there. It's the perfect size. And it's great because, you know, they're better than standard O-rings. They resist more chemicals and temperatures and whatnot. So that's good. And I'm going to use some silicone paste to lubricate it this time because I guess I didn't stick enough engine oil on it the last time or whatever, but not taking any chances this time. By the way, guys, remember I was saying in the previous video, I was going to do a test and see if you can get the upper valve covers on or upper timing covers on with the Vanos solenoid still in place. Because again, if you only have the German Auto Solutions kit, they don't send you that socket to unscrew those. And the answer is yes, it is possible. You can just sort of maneuver it back and out of place. And then you can just use a normal, you know, adjustable wrench to get that thing loose. So you don't need that socket. Well, that's going to do it for this video, guys. In the next video, we're finally going to be putting everything back together, and there'll be one more after that on the Valley Pan gasket. I am the 50s Kid. Thanks a lot for watching.